I was 13 when I first understood that my parents saw me as an investment rather than a son. It wasn't a sudden realization, but a slow, creeping truth that revealed itself over years of conditional affection and unspoken debts. "Daniel, if you want those new shoes, you'll have to earn them," my father said when I was 12, arms crossed as he stood over me. "Caleb doesn't need to because he's younger. But you should already understand responsibility." Caleb, my younger brother, lounged on the couch behind him, a brand new gaming console on his lap. He hadn't earned that. He hadn't needed to. By the time I turned 18, I was working 2 part-time jobs while Caleb had a moped, fully paid for by our parents. When I asked why, my mother simply said, "He's not as responsible as you. He needs more support." Support. That was the word they used when explaining why my college fund had mysteriously shrunk over the years, redirected to cover Caleb's expenses. That was the word they used when I was told to pay rent while still in high school, while Caleb lived at home for free. Every milestone in my life came with a price tag, while my brother drifted through life unburdened. Yet, like a fool, I kept striving, believing that if I worked hard enough, they would finally see me as their son rather than their personal investment. That illusion shattered on my 25th birthday. The dinner was supposed to be a celebration, a rare moment of family unity. I arrived expecting cake and warm wishes. Instead, my father slid a crisp white envelope across the table. "Happy birthday, Daniel." I hesitated before opening it, my stomach tightening as I pulled out a formal document. Notice of debt collection. The paper listed years of parental contributions with absurd precision. Housing $35,000. Food $18,400. Medical bills $9,300. Educational support $25,000. At the bottom, the total read $97,790. A bitter laugh escaped me. "You're joking." My father's face remained unreadable. "We've invested in you for years. Now that you're successful, it's only fair you give back." My mother chimed in, her voice syrupy with forced concern. "Your brother will need support too, Daniel. You know how hard it's been for him." Caleb smirked from across the table, twirling his fork in his untouched pasta. I stared at them, something cold settling in my chest. "Caleb, where's your invoice?" He merely smirked. "I'm different. I'll be the one taking care of Mom and Dad when they're old." "Is that what they told you?" I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. "You mean they let you live here rent-free, buy you cars, fund your lifestyle, and you still think you're the golden son? Wake up, Caleb. You're not their future, you're their excuse." I clenched my jaw. Horse Caleb. The golden child, shielded from every hardship, now conveniently becoming my financial responsibility. I dropped the invoice onto the table. "I owe you nothing." My father's expression darkened. "You wouldn't be where you are without us. We sacrificed for you." I leaned back, forcing myself to stay calm. "Parents don't charge their children for raising them. That's not sacrifice, that's parenting." Silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken truths. I could see it now, this wasn't about family. This was a transaction. I stood up. "If this is what I mean to you, then consider this dinner my final payment." Without another word, I walked out, leaving their betrayal sitting cold on the table. I sat in my apartment, staring at the crumpled invoice on my desk. I had spent the last 2 days trying to shake the bitter taste of betrayal, but the feeling only deepened. Something about the total didn't sit right. On impulse, I grabbed a calculator and began tallying the numbers myself. Then I saw it, an unexplained charge labeled interest for delayed reimbursement. A staggering $15,000. My stomach twisted. That was the exact amount I had given my parents 2 years ago when they called me, frantic, claiming they were struggling financially. Fury burned through me. They hadn't just kept track of their so-called expenses on me, they had rewritten history, twisting my generosity into debt. My phone buzzed. My father picked up, my voice cold. "Explain the interest charge." A pause. Then his smooth, casual tone came through. "It's a fair adjustment, son. You gave us that money freely, yes, but we needed stability. Consider it a necessary correction." My hands clenched into fists. "Correction? You mean deception?" My mother's voice chimed in next, clearly on speaker. Daniel, darling, don't be dramatic. Successful children should be grateful. Your brother would never hesitate to help. I let out a slow breath, my resolve solidifying. Caleb never had to help because you handed him everything. Silence. Then my father sighed. We expected more from you. My voice was ice. So did I. I hung up. The game had just begun, but this time I wasn't playing by their rules. I arrived at my parents' house unannounced. Tension in the air was suffocating as I stepped inside, placing a thick envelope on the dining table. My parents and Caleb sat across from me, their expressions ranging from smug to indifferent. My father smirked. Changed your mind about the invoice? I slid the envelope toward him. No. But I did some accounting of my own. My mother's fingers tensed on her teacup as my father opened the packet. Inside was a detailed breakdown of every dollar they had taken from me, my inheritance, my college fund, the loans I had given them, each one cross-referenced with bank statements. The bottom was a final total, $132,000. Caleb scoffed. This is ridiculous. I leaned forward. If you're treating me like a debtor, then so be it. I expect full repayment. My father's smirk faltered. This is different. Parents provide. Children give back. That's how family works. My voice turned razor sharp. No. That's how manipulation works. My mother's face paled. Daniel, I stood. I'm done being your investment. As I turned to leave, I reached into my wallet, pulled out a $10 bill, and handed it to my father. His brows furrowed in confusion. Buy some lottery tickets, I said, my voice laced with mock sympathy. Maybe you'll get lucky. I paused in the doorway, glancing back one final time. I, on the other hand, got lucky in the lottery you played with me in life. I didn't wait for a response. I walked out, leaving them in stunned silence. This time, I wasn't looking back. I felt an unfamiliar lightness in my chest as I stepped out of that house, for the last time. I had won. Not in the way they wanted, by paying their absurd invoice, but by severing the chains they had spent years tightening around me. A week later, a letter arrived at my apartment. I hesitated before opening it, already expecting another guilt-laden demand. But inside was a formal notice from a lawyer. They were suing me for unpaid family contributions. I exhaled slowly, shaking my head. They were truly desperate. I took my time crafting a response. Instead of engaging in their petty lawsuit, I forwarded all the financial records to the authorities, including proof of my stolen inheritance, drained college fund, and the so-called loans I had repaid multiple times. With a single email, I set in motion an investigation that would unravel every lie they had built their moral fortress upon. A month later, the fallout was catastrophic. My parents were forced to liquidate assets to cover legal penalties and unpaid taxes exposed during the process. Their accounts, which had been comfortably padded by years of quietly siphoning off my resources, were now under audit. Their social circle, the very community they tried to impress, turned silent. Caleb, who had never worked a day in his life, was left floundering without their endless handouts. The moped, the consoles, the luxuries, they were all gone. Without the financial safety net they'd grown so accustomed to, they were forced to face the reality of their own choices. I received one final message from my father. A pitiful, half-hearted plea for family unity. I deleted it without a second thought. As I stepped onto my apartment balcony that night, the air felt different, cleaner, lighter. For the first time in years, I felt free. No more debts. No more manipulation. No more being treated as an asset to be drained. I hadn't just walked away from a toxic family dynamic. I had dismantled the illusion they had tried so hard to build around me. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was peaceful. I looked out at the city, lights blinking like distant stars. My life was mine again. My choices. My victories. My freedom. And in that quiet moment, I knew something with absolute certainty. They hadn't broken me. They had forged me.